Welcome to another episode of the Tales Phony podcast, where today we will discuss one of the most mysterious and controversial experiments in history, the Philadelphia experiment and its related Montauk Project. These two cases, although often discussed separately, are in fact inextricably linked, like some sailors who, after returning from invisibility, melted into the ship's structure. Let's start from the beginning. In 1943, powerful generators were installed on board the warship USS Eldridge, whose task was to create an electromagnetic field around the ship. The aim of this endeavor was to make the ship invisible to enemy radars. However, the effect it produced exceeded all expectations. After the generators were activated, the USS Eldridge actually disappeared from radar screens. But not only that, it also disappeared from the field of view of observers who watched the event live. What were the consequences? After the ship returned, some of the crew found themselves in a dramatic state. Some of the sailors literally melted into the metal structures of the ship. This tragedy led to the suspension of further experiments, at least officially. The question is, did they really stop research in this direction? Today, we will explore the topic of both the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project, a project that developed based on earlier experiences with the USS Eldridge. Both stories are closely related, and the mysterious events that took place are still controversial. However, before we move on to the Montauk Project, it is worth mentioning a book that caused a huge stir in the world of alternative theories. This is the book Montauk Project: Experiments in Time, written by Preston Nichols, who claims to have been directly involved in these projects. The aforementioned Nichols, like others involved in Montauk, presents a fascinating, although hard-to-believe version of events. The Montauk Project we are talking about involved experiments with time, space, and the mind, and its location was supposed to be on Montauk Headland on Long Island. In the following episodes, we will discuss both teleportation and time experiments, and we will also examine whether the information presented by Nichols may have a real basis. Fasten your seatbelts, because we are in for a fascinating journey through one of the most mysterious and dangerous adventures of the 20th century. Preston Nichols, continuing his research after visiting the closed but still active Montauk military base, did not give up on discovering the secrets of this place. A radio signal at a frequency of 410 to 420 megahertz, which interfered with the psychic abilities of the people participating in his experiments, caught his attention, suggesting that something unusual was happening on the premises of Fort Hero. The radar that he noticed on the grounds of the base, although it was officially closed in 1969, still emitted a signal that could affect people's minds. In the 1970s, especially in 1974, Nichols became increasingly interested in the study of electromagnetism and its influence on human consciousness. An expert in radio engineering, he began to conduct more advanced investigations into radio signals transmitted from Montauk. As he discovered more and more facts, he came to the conclusion that the military base had not been closed at all, but had been transformed into a secret research facility. Nichols stated that Montauk was the site of advanced experiments with electromagnetic waves that had an impact on mind control. This technology had its roots in research conducted during World War II and was later developed as part of the Montauk Project. Nichols suggested that the work on this technology could have been a continuation of secret research such as the Philadelphia experiment, which took place in 1943 and aimed to try to make the USS Eldridge invisible using electromagnetism. In his book, Nichols also describes how in 1974, he discovered that antennas and radar devices at the Montauk base were still active, even though the base was supposed to have been closed 5 years earlier. The signals at frequencies between 410 and 420 megahertz, according to his research, were supposed to disrupt people's perception abilities and put them into blackout states, similar to mind manipulation. Nichols, equipped with a modified directional antenna placed on the roof of his car, discovered that the source of these signals came from radars at the Montauk site. The technology that Nichols described was based on the precise use of radio waves to manipulate consciousness and even experiments on time control. Nichols indicated that Montauk could have been a place where the possibility of creating time windows or portals leading to other dimensions was being studied. His accounts also mention collaborations with scientists who were working on teleportation and manipulation of space-time. In 1980, Nichols established contact with people who were allegedly involved in the Montauk Project. Among them were technicians, scientists, and former employees of the base, who confirmed that experiments on mind control and other technologies that were top secret were being conducted at Montauk. He also described incidents during which participants in the experiments lost their memories or had their memories altered, which could suggest that the base was working on technology to manipulate human consciousness. According to Nichols, research at Montauk continued for many years after the base was officially closed. In the 1970s and 1980s, experiments were conducted there on mind control, manipulation of time and space, and the use of radio waves to disrupt human perceptual abilities. By the early 1980s, Nichols claimed that the Montauk base had achieved the ability to manipulate time on a scale that allowed time travel and experiments related to so-called time tunnels. He suggested that this technology could lead to experiments that would have a profound impact on humanity, but were completely classified. Preston Nichols, while initially unable to fully grasp the scope of the discovery as he delved deeper into the subject, realized that Montauk was not only continuing to experiment with electromagnetism, but was also the epicenter of research into technologies that could change reality. Nichols, after being politely asked to leave by Beester Anderson, was not discouraged. The whole event left him with a lot of questions. He wondered why a strategic base like Montauk, so important just a few years ago, had been suddenly abandoned without any trace of military presence, except for a few old documents, equipment, and radars that could still be emitting disturbing signals. Nichols began to delve into his memory, especially the intense feeling that he had once been at the base, although he could not recall the details exactly. Over the following months, Nichols returned to the event many times. Over time, as he learned more and spoke with people who had contact with the Montauk base, he discovered that his hunches were correct. Montauk was not only a site of experiments, but also something much larger, a central hub for mind control and time control research conducted under a cloak of secrecy by the U.S. government since the 1960s. In 1984, after receiving additional information, Nichols learned that Montauk was closely linked to the Phoenix Project, which had begun in the 1950s to continue research into mind control technology. The technology, which was supposedly based on the results of the 1943 Philadelphia experiment, was being developed continuously at facilities like Montauk. According to many sources, the base was a place where advanced radio equipment was used to manipulate electromagnetic fields, which was supposed to lead to tests of teleportation and space-time manipulation. As Nichols analyzed the available information, he noticed that the technologies used at Montauk were related to theories of electromagnetism. In particular, he was interested in how old radar devices, such as the SAGE radar, were able to generate a powerful electromagnetic field. This type of radar, installed during World War II, was originally intended to defend against air attacks, but Nichols pointed out that it was later adapted for new research. This time, technology that had the ability to manipulate human consciousness. In the 1980s, Nichols learned from witnesses and former base personnel that the Montauk Project was funded by covert sources, including funds from secret government and military programs. One of its key elements was supposedly mind control, which was confirmed by numerous accounts from individuals who claimed to have been subjected to experiments designed to erase memories or alter their psychic abilities. According to these accounts, Montauk experimented not only with radio waves, but also with devices that could manipulate time. The base was supposed to be testing the creation of time tunnels that would allow people or objects to be sent to different points in time. Nichols cited numerous accounts from individuals who claimed to have witnessed time travel, including to future and past events. This technology, they claimed, was based on the development of the results of the Philadelphia experiment, which was intended to teleport the USS Eldridge in 1943. One of the strangest and most intriguing aspects of Nichols's account was the story of the Beast of Montauk. In 1983, an experiment opened a time tunnel through which a creature, dubbed the Beast, supposedly came through. Nichols claimed that the experiments conducted at Montauk had unforeseen consequences, including the destabilization of reality and the appearance of supernatural beings. In the late 1980s, convinced of the veracity of his findings, Nichols decided to share his story with a wider audience. He described in detail how the technology developed at Montauk affected human life by manipulating time, space, and consciousness. In his book, published in 1992, Nichols revealed many secrets related to this project, describing, among other things, how electromagnetic wave technology was used to control minds and change reality. Although many people were skeptical of his account, Nichols claimed to have evidence of the Montauk Project, including photographs of radars, devices, and testimonies from people who participated in the experiments. The Montauk mystery has become one of the most controversial topics related to conspiracy theories about government-human experiments and technologies that went beyond the boundaries of science. Nichols continued to investigate the subject, and his work on the Montauk Project continued for many years. In subsequent publications, he revealed more and more disturbing aspects of the government's research into mind control, space-time manipulation, and paranormal phenomena. During one of their expeditions to the abandoned Montauk base, Preston Nichols and Duncan Cameron discovered something that further intensified their research and speculation about the site. There, they found a massive, old radar dish that they determined may have played a major role in the experiments that were being conducted there. The antenna was incredibly large, and Nichols concluded that its size and technology indicated advanced yet mysterious applications. As a result of this research, Nichols came to believe that the antenna could have the ability to influence human consciousness. This thesis gained traction when Nichols recalled conversations with local police who reported strange occurrences on the island. During the time the antenna was active, strange social tensions would arise between groups of people, and then suddenly these conflicts would disappear, as if someone was manipulating their behavior. Nichols began to suspect that this was not just a random military base, but a place where experiments were being conducted to control minds and consciousness. Shortly thereafter, while continuing to gather equipment from the base and repair it, Nichols came across a person named Duncan Cameron. Duncan had strong psychic abilities, which quickly intrigued Nichols. Duncan became a permanent member of Nichols' research group, and with him, Nichols continued his experiments. One of the most disturbing moments occurred when Nichols, Duncan, and their friend Brian visited the Montauk base again. Brian, who had some telepathic abilities, suddenly began to feel uneasy in Duncan's presence. He claimed that his presence made him feel uneasy, even panicky. Brian could not sleep, feeling that something very wrong was happening around Duncan. As a result of these emotions, Brian withdrew from further research, leaving Nichols and Duncan to continue their research together. Nichols suggested that these events could be connected to mysterious government experiments or even the Montauk Project, a theoretical program that aimed to manipulate time, consciousness, and reality. Duncan Cameron, while in a trance state during one of his visits to the Montauk base, began to say very strange things that shocked Preston Nichols. He claimed that he had a brother, Edward Cameron, and that they were both technicians aboard the USS Eldridge. This association immediately referred to the legendary Philadelphia experiment, which allegedly took place in 1943. This experiment was intended to make a ship invisible to radar, and according to some theories, led to the teleportation of the ship and its occupants, causing traumatic effects on the crew. Cameron also confessed that while at the Montauk base, he began to remember things that he had not had access to before. It was as if his memory had been unlocked at Montauk, opening up memories that had previously been blocked. Cameron suggested that at this base he was part of a mind control program that was intended to transform people into forgotten killers. He admitted that his mission was to kill Nichols and destroy his lab using a device he had brought with him, a part of a tape recorder. Nichols, although shaken, immediately believed his words, as he himself had experienced strange gaps in his memory that could suggest that he, too, had been a victim of a similar program. Rather than give in to fear, Nichols and Cameron decided to go public with this information. They concluded that if they spoke out about what they had discovered, their opponents would have no choice but to stop trying to eliminate them. Nichols continued his research, and in 1984, although they did not face direct attacks, interest in their discoveries and accounts began to grow. However, the case did not receive real publicity until 1996, when Nichols and Cameron spoke at a conference organized by the Psychotronics Association, an organization dedicated to research into paranormal phenomena and technologies that affect consciousness. Their stories caused a huge stir among the participants. At this symposium, Nichols and Cameron were joined by a powerful man whom Nichols called Lenny. Lenny had an uncle who was a senator or congressman, and he used his influence to gain access to government documents about secret projects being conducted at Montauk. Although Montauk had officially been closed since 1969, and there had been no documented military activity there, no information had been released. The base remained a secret, and all official records of the Montauk Project were unavailable. After a period of heated revelations and attempts to disclose information, the whole thing went quiet for a while. Nichols returned to work at a company called BJM, probably related to radio and telecommunications technologies. He did, however, mention a project called Moby that was being conducted at that company, although he was not entirely clear on what exactly it involved. Interestingly, Nichols suspected that he himself had been programmed, and his memories began to unlock gradually in the 1980s. One day, he noticed something strange, a plaster on his hand that he didn't remember putting on. When he realized that he couldn't have done it himself, he went to the company doctor, who confirmed that he hadn't put anything on. This event raised more questions for him about his state of consciousness and what was really going on in his life and at work. Back in his office, Preston Nichols noticed that his work was becoming increasingly disrupted by strange spikes in consciousness. It seemed to him that he was sometimes operating in two personalities, one as a technician and the other as someone who held a much higher position, although he had no memory of it. He also discovered that his second personality had access to secret rooms in the institution where he worked. One day, after accidentally obtaining a pass from a guard who apparently saw nothing strange in his presence, Preston found himself in an office he had never known. His name was on the door, but combined with a title he had never held, Dr. Preston Nichols, Deputy Project Manager. In the office, he found evidence that he worked there as someone of a much higher status than the ordinary technician he seemed to be on a daily basis. There were documents, files, and even devices that he was unfamiliar with, but which seemed technologically advanced. As he reviewed these materials, he began to recall fragments of events that he had not previously remembered at all. He realized that he had probably put the patch on his hand during one of his consciousness jumps, most likely after he had been injured while working on a secret device in that office. This explained why, after returning to his original consciousness, he couldn't understand where the patch had come from. He managed to keep his findings a secret for a while, but his curiosity was still growing. Despite warnings from his superiors, he decided to visit that mysterious office again. This time, however, the door was open and there were no signs of life inside. Everything looked as if it had been hastily removed. All that remained were furniture prints on the floor and a bunch of wires that clearly suggested that there had been some high-tech device there before, which had been suddenly removed. Preston continued his exploration and discovered a door leading to an elevator. This door was hidden in the back of the room. When he tried to start the elevator, it turned out that a special code had to be entered. Accidentally pressing a few buttons, he set off an alarm. Before he could realize it, the security service arrived and immediately detained him for questioning. Although he somehow managed to get out of the charges, he was warned not to get involved in the secret parts of the building anymore. However, this experience only strengthened his conviction that the institution he worked for was conducting mysterious and highly advanced technological experiments. Shortly after, Nichols noticed more strange events. One day, walking through the corridors of the institute, he again felt an irresistible urge to enter another, previously inaccessible section. This time, he decided to approach the guard and, for show, handed him his ID, as if to check if he would get a pass. To his surprise, the guard looked at the ID, confirmed his identity, and issued a pass without hesitation. This was shocking for Preston. He had never been in this part of the building, and yet the guard acted as if he had every right to enter. Intrigued, he walked down the corridor until he reached the door, which once again had his name on it. He opened it and went inside. This time the office looked the same as before, although it was still empty. On the desk was a business card with his name and title, Dr. Preston Nichols, Deputy Project Manager. This was the moment when he began to understand that he was probably functioning in two personalities, once as a technician, once as a person at a higher level of the hierarchy, involved in secret research. He felt that during his consciousness jumps, he was working on something very advanced technologically, but after returning to his original personality, he had no knowledge of it. This dual identity was increasingly disturbing to him. A few days later, he decided to consciously return to his office as a technician to see what was going on. When he tried to enter the mysterious office again, the guard issued him a pass again. This time, however, when he entered, a man was waiting for him there, introducing himself as Robertson, name changed in the story. Robertson informed Preston that he was taking part in a top-secret project, and any attempts to breach security or talk about what he had discovered could have serious consequences for him. He emphasized that the project they were working on was extremely important and could not be revealed to anyone outside. Preston understood that the situation had become very serious and that he was in real danger if he continued to ask questions. Despite these warnings, Preston Nichols could no longer ignore what he was discovering. Eventually, he concluded that he was working on something related to secret government projects, including possible research into mind control and advanced electromagnetic technologies that could affect reality and human consciousness. Immediately upon entering the room where Mr. Robertson was waiting, Preston Nichols found the interior empty. All the furniture, documents, and equipment that had witnessed his actions just a few days ago were gone. Only the cold, white concrete of the floor remained, and the air was filled with an atmosphere of sudden abandonment. Surprised by this sight, he realized that after his unplanned visit, immediate action had been taken to eliminate everything. The impression it made on him was strong. He assumed that those who managed the project had concluded that he was leaky. His second personality began to escape, merging with his true self, which could reveal more secrets that they wanted to hide. With this thought, Preston realized that the project he was involved in could be much more dangerous than he had thought. He was starting to feel scared, so he decided to withdraw, mind his own business, and not pursue the subject that was becoming more and more disturbing. However, as often happens in such situations, fate had other plans for him. In May 1990, while installing a Delta antenna related to new communication and monitoring technologies, something extraordinary happened. As the antenna was being plugged in, Preston felt a strong impulse that started the process of unlocking his memory. It was like a magic button. Suddenly, all the memories came back in a clear way. He saw images that had been hidden deep in his mind for years. Details of the projects he had been working on appeared, as well as scenes from his work at the mysterious Montauk base, about which he had had only a vague idea for a long time. However, the next month brought dramatic changes. He was fired from BJMM, which in the context of his previous experiences was like being pushed out onto the street. From one day to the next, his life changed dramatically. He felt that doors were closing in front of him that should never have been opened. As the memories returned, he grew afraid of what he might discover about himself and the projects he was involved in. Preston felt that not only his life, but also the fate of other people could be at risk. His connections to mysterious government research and paranormal phenomena that went far beyond the boundaries of normal science were becoming increasingly clear. At the same time, he wondered if other people he worked with were experiencing similar problems. As he analyzed his experience, he came to the conclusion that the project he was involved in may have involved secret research into mind control, telepathic phenomena, and other technologies that were unknown to most of the public at the time. These memories were so intense that Preston had no doubt that this research had a profound impact on reality, and its reach was much wider than anyone could have imagined. He decided to try to understand what was actually happening at Montauk, and he was determined to uncover the truth, despite the risks involved. What had happened there could have long-term consequences not only for him, but for the entire society. If he could determine what was really behind these projects, he could gain knowledge that would not only help him understand his own past, but also reveal secrets that could affect the future. Preston knew that his story was only the beginning, and that he had to put together the pieces that could affect his future. Ultimately, he felt that not only was his life in danger, but also the lives of others whose fates were inextricably linked to the Montauk projects. This uncertainty and growing anxiety accompanied him every day, and his decisions became more and more deliberate because each step could bring him closer to discovering the truth, but could also lead to irreversible consequences. This is just the beginning of the story, and Preston was determined to reveal all the secrets that were hidden in the shadows of Montauk. Thank you for joining us for today's episode, which introduced us to the mysterious world of the Montauk Project. This is just the beginning of this fascinating story that combines elements of technology, paranormal phenomena, and human experiences that may exceed the limits of our understanding. In the next parts of the podcast, we will explore even more threads related to Montauk, discovering more secrets and mysteries that can change our perception of reality. If these topics interest you, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss an episode. Your support and involvement are extremely important to us, and thanks to subscriptions, we can reach even more listeners and together discover the secrets that hide in our world. See you in the next episode, where we will continue our journey through the dark corners of the Montauk Project.